So yeah, it's been a minute, and today we're going to talk about where we've been, what we're doing now, and how the Crucible has slowly, over the last few months, gone back to a much more tolerable place going into Lightfall. My name is Lionhearts. Welcome back to the Crucible Brothers. It's been a while. We're happy to see you. And before we get started, make sure you guys take a second, like the video, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel because we are back. We're streaming. We're getting back into content. Lightfall looks like it might be an exciting new turning point in Destiny's history, and we are ready to go. So firstly, yes, it has been 4 months since we last uploaded on the channel. That was back in the middle of Season of the Plunder, and to be frank, as with a lot of other people in the community, both me and my partners, Gumi and Gumi, hit a wall, where we simply got burnt out with the current state of the game. It is no exaggeration to say that Season of the Plunder will go down as unfortunately one of the worst seasons of content in Destiny's history, and not only was the PvE cycle of the game staler than it had ever been, PvP would unfortunately hit its lowest point possibly ever in the history of the franchise. And when you culminate all of that with maybe one of the most toxic social environments the game has ever seen, it's not that hard to understand why things got a little bit too hot to handle for us. The reality is, whether you're a 4KD monster or just a little Timmy trying to find his thumbs in the Crucible, we play these games to have fun. And when you stop having fun with the game and you're just forcing yourself to go through the motions, whether it be for a YouTube project that you want to finish or to help out clanmates on a trials weekend, you want to be able to enjoy the game whether or not you see it as something that could potentially be a career or not. And we simply were not enjoying the game anymore. It was hard to get through even 1 or 2 Crucible matches with the current state of the game at the time and not be so frustrated that I would simply have to walk away from my computer. And while normally I would find a way to push through that kind of frustration, again, it was one thing on top of another on top of another. The toxic community sentiment, PvE being stale and the grind being miserable and Catch Crash that season, all of it was just simply too much, and eventually we had to stop. We had to walk away. And burnout is one of those things that can be very tricky to recover from. If you've ever been burnt out on something in your life, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. That feeling of detachment from a hobby that you've seen as an integral part of your daily routine for so long can be very hard to deal with. It got to the point where me personally, I can't speak for the Gummies, but I wasn't even playing video games hardly at all as much as I'd used to been. I was very distant from the hobby because I'd felt so jaded. The general online discourse around things like skill-based matchmaking, competitive versus casual play, what it means to be a sweat versus a noob, these discussions were so trite, so unoriginal, and continually so toxic and meaningless that this negative feedback loop was beginning to affect my everyday life. So eventually you have to find a point where you need to step away and reassess. I stepped away. I spent those 4 months doing other things, trying to pursue other projects, mostly just doing nothing because of various issues I won't get into here. But all along, I kept on waiting and waiting because I knew on a long enough timescale Bungie would begin to see change. Destiny, even at its worst points, has found a way to dig itself out of holes over and over again, and while it can be a bit of cope to continue to say, well, they'll just fix it, Bungie has been following through in these last few months and making significant changes to the game ahead of Lightfall that are productive, meaningful, in line with what the community had complained about, and pushing the game towards a healthier and healthier state. We still have obvious issues: lobby balancing, skill-based matchmaking, the lack of dedicated PvP content. But stuff like changes to the sandbox, adjustments to skill-based matchmaking to make it less pervasive, the introduction of a true competitive mode, reductions in the grind outside of the game for crafting. These things all slowly started to ease some of the troubles, especially on the sandbox side. Something I will touch on more in just a second. I really do want to highlight just how bad things were at the height of Season of the Plunder if you maybe didn't play PvP or had stepped away from the game before then. And it all starts and ends with the implementation of skill-based matchmaking into quick play. Now, as I just said previously, I believe the discussions around skill-based matchmaking in the community are circular, full of bad faith arguments, and so toxic it's no longer worth my time, effort, or sanity to wade into. So I'm going to do my best here to lay one more comprehensive, objective assessment of skill-based matchmaking, and then I will no longer refer to the subject unless it is in reference to future changes. Now, as an above-average player, I understand and commend the goal of trying to have a balanced game environment for all players. The idea, again, the idea of skill-based matchmaking is one that I think you can get behind if implemented correctly. However, the problem, as with most things, is implementation. The way it's implemented into the game currently, trying to force a 50% win rate for all players at the absolute sacrifice of connection and lobby balancing is not a commendable way to go about that goal. I firmly believe this system has not produced better match outcomes for all skill bands. Even bad players are dealing with worse lobbies, and the best players get continually shafted. And what it boils down to is Destiny's biggest missing piece. Every other competitive game that I know that implements skill-based matchmaking or some form of lobby balancing via MMR or rank has something that Destiny doesn't. And that is dedicated servers that put you into specific regions when you queue for the game. See, here's the thing. If you have skill-based matchmaking with servers, then you're trying to put me, for example, with players of my relative skill, and then in my relative region. I'm on the west coast of the United States. So when I queue, I would prefer to have players who are maybe in the west coast of the United States. And then, if they can't find any, you expand. You go to US Central, you expand. Maybe you go up into Canada, or you go to the east coast of the United States. You don't send me to goddamn Senegal. And because of Destiny's reliance on peer-to-peer connections, where I'm connected instead of to a server, to individual players in my lobby, the skill-based matchmaking system is not going to be able to guarantee a consistent connection with everyone in my lobby, no matter how well implemented the system is. Because at the end of the day, if we have to connect peer-to-peer, and let's say we have a low player population like at the end of a season, then there are less players in my relative location to queue with. And I'm a lot less likely to get players with average good quality connections. I firmly believe that skill-based matchmaking can work, but only with a thorough and robust server structure system behind it, and Destiny simply does not have it, and unless something significantly changes like an entire rework of the game onto a new engine, we won't be seeing it. Therefore, I firmly believe that skill-based matchmaking is a firm and significantly bad thing to pursue for the health of the game. There are other ways to lobby balance, they should be pursued instead, and connections should be preserved first and foremost above everything else for the average quality and enjoyment of the game. If you disagree with this, you are simply not engaging with the argument. You are either being bad faith or blind to the issues at hand, and I will no longer be referencing you ever again. Alright, that rant's over, we can move on. Outside of that, obviously PvP still has a lot of issues. The lack of meaningful content, both cosmetic and meaningful. The launch of competitive, while commendable, lacked a lot of the reward structure, but Bungie has already addressed this, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. I would say, with the recent announcement of the return of Countdown, something we're going to talk about in a future video, I think the future for competitive actually looks very bright, and I do believe it could be a system that will alleviate a lot of the issues in the game if supported correctly. All in all, another thing that has helped is that compared to Season of the Plunder, the sandbox for PvP has gotten much more manageable. Obviously, the most noteworthy thing is the changes to airborne effectiveness, effectively bringing back hand cannons into the spotlight and allowing aggressive play to shine once again. This is all in all a W change. As much as I am a pulse rifle player, I enjoy pulse rifles greatly. It has to be said that with there being no way for hand cannons to gap close, the pulse rifle dominance of the last year or so has been routine and pretty insufferable, led the way almost entirely by No Time to Explain and its cohort of merry gremlins. And honestly, I still think we need to look at the aggressive pulse rifle framework and rework them in some way, because they're faster than base time to kill compared to hand cannons, with standard 40 meters of range, continues to be one of the most oppressive weapon types in the entire game, short of the oppressiveness of snipers at high level play. Combine that with the reversion of the terrible slide nerf from ages ago, and aggressive play is back and better than ever. SMGs are shining in a great way, led by Ikelos. Abilities are still way too frequent and dominate the Crucible in a very unhealthy way, but we do have to wait and see here, as it was announced in Lightfall that ability spam is being targeted. All in all, these changes have made the Crucible a lot more tolerable. I'm able to play the game again, and for the most part have a good time. I still get frustrated. If you watch our streams, yes, we do get frustrated. We're only human. but the general health of the game is much better. What I would really like to see, and in the year of Lightfall I think this would be very meaningful to the PvP community, is a dedicated season to the health of PvP. PvP, in short, has been neglected for nearly 3 years now in terms of meaningful content, and the Lightfall State of the Game post by Joe Blackburn, only promising 3 maps over the year and 1, maybe 2 game modes, is nothing short of a lackluster reveal. Frankly, if PvP is going to be considered 50% of the experience in Destiny, which it definitely is not right now, it needs to be supported more. We need more. We need more game modes, more maps, more variety, more loot, more incentive to play. We have this great system with weapon crafting and the mementos, but there's no Crucible-based mementos outside of Trials. The changes coming to Trials in terms of the flawless card changes are great, but Trials could be gimped if skill-based matchmaking is introduced into it, which would be one of the worst changes in the history of the game. Please, Bungie, if you're listening, and I know you are not to me, but listen to everybody else, do not put skill-based matchmaking in Trials. You will kill the playlist almost immediately. As much as Bungie have done all of the right things in terms of what they're saying over the last 3 or 4 months, one thing they have said over the years is that PvP truly matters, but their actions are not meeting their words. We need to see a complete and commitment-focused push in PvP this year. I think that's very important to the health of the game. I don't know if it'll happen, but we'll just have to wait and see. All in all, just as some final closing thoughts, the last 6 months or so have definitely been pretty harsh, both personally and professionally, in terms of watching how things have developed with Destiny and its community. I truly do deep down believe in what this game can deliver. There is no other game like Destiny. We say it so often, but it really is true. Nothing delivers the consistent quality that Destiny has on its scale and for what it offers price-wise. There is nothing like Destiny. There's no game that feels like Destiny. There's no game that has what Destiny has. And Bungie could very well squander the biggest golden goose in the gaming industry if they don't take this feedback seriously and critically. And at one point this year, it looked like they wouldn't. However, with Season of the Seraph, we've seen many of these changes both talked about and implemented that have been directly correlated to the feedback the community has given previously. Unfortunately, a reality of game development is that at any given point, we're probably 6 months behind whatever complaints we are giving at any time. It takes roughly 2 seasons to start seeing real change, something Bungie has iterated over and over again in their recent documentation. So we must keep that in mind when we give our criticisms as a community. We can't expect radical change overnight, but we also need Bungie to be active in communicating when change is coming down the pipe and what's being done behind the scenes. All in all, I hope that Bungie continues to reach out to the community and talk to us more, something that became very tumultuous at the height of Season of the Plunder, and fortunately I do believe we are starting to build back some of the bridge that the community had burnt in the previous year. It's still not easy to be a Bungie dev and deal with most of this community, and I understand that, but the people who are reaching out, I really do respect your efforts. All in all, I think Lightfall has potential to be one of the best expansions in Destiny history. The PvE side of the game is only getting better. The grind of the game is continuing to evolve and become more and more interesting and less tedious and monotonous. And hopefully PvP can reach the heights it truly deserves in the coming year. In terms of us, content's coming back. We've been streaming consistently, both on my Twitch and now back on this YouTube channel. I plan to keep up streaming throughout the year and the Lightfall release. And to go with that, you will see content on this channel. It will be different than some of the content we produced previously. I still want to produce some of the videos we were doing previously, the weapon reviews and stuff like that. But I also plan to dive into some of the more interesting stuff related to competitive and the meta-analysis of this game. I also want to do something that's a bit more lighthearted, maybe some more comedy-based and lighthearted commentary-style videos. All in all, we're going to be focusing on that, we're going to be focusing on shorts, and we're going to be focusing on the streaming. But most of all, we just want to see this channel succeed and grow, and we hope you guys will be with us on that journey. So make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment down below if you're happy to see us back, and join us soon for another video or a stream, and we'll see you when you see you. My name is Lionhearts, this is the Crucible Brothers. Thank you guys for watching, and we're happy to be back.